Join me as I smoke this brisket. This will be cooked with me edition, so it'll be a little longer. If you want the condensed version, I'll have that out soon. This is everything I use to season my brisket. And of course, before I smoke the brisket, the first thing I had to do is make me a nice strong drink, because you can't smoke without having this drink. In this case, I had some Crown with some Coke, and cheers. Well, let's go and get to it now. Of course, you need to wash your hands. And for those who never worked in the restaurant industry, this is how you wash your hands. I know it's kind of off view, but you wash all the way to your elbows. Today I've been smoking this 20-pound brisket right here. Look at this beauty. This is a knife I use. Big shout out to my father-in-law for getting me this. It is extremely sharp. A little foreshadowing right there. I'm going to cut this bad boy open real quick. This is a 20-pound brisket, but I'm going to shave off about a pound or two of this hard fat right here. I do want to leave a nice good layer of fat, but the fat that is hard is not going to be good to eat, so I want to get that part off. And this is a whole brisket, so I want to separate the flat from the other part there. So the lean part of the brisket and the fatty part of the brisket, I want to split into two different pieces. Keep in mind, I'm an amateur, so for those who are cutting meat for a living, like butchers and people who barbecue at their own business, yeah, they're going to butcher the way I cut this meat. I'm sure they will. This will eventually be two separate pieces, as you see right here. Now they're separated, I'm going to cut a little bit of this hard fat off here. I want to keep the soft fat on, because the soft fat is going to be the juicy part of the meat. You want that to render down. But this hard piece, that's no good. That's trash. Now that this is separated, you want to smother it in mustard. You can't have too much. You can use oil instead, which is why I have the olive oil there. Sometimes I use mustard, sometimes I use olive oil. It's kind of, whatever I feel like at the very moment when I pick it out. Which is why I have both here. Then smooth it out evenly. You see I have a glove here because I like to clean up as I go along, and as I was washing the knife in the sink, I cut myself. So at this point the knife is already cleaned off and put up far away. I have a band-aid on. I still put this glove on, food safety. And yes, this is a brand new glove, by the way. Now I do a light seasoning of the onion powder, followed by a light seasoning of the garlic powder all over the brisket. Shout out to H-E-B because they have great seasonings, and I have the H-E-B brisket seasoning, and I put a pretty thick layer. It's kind of hard to see how actually thick this layer is in the video. You can hardly see through it in person, but in the video it looks thin, but it's really not a thin layer. It's a pretty thick layer. And don't be scared, you can't over season it with this brisket seasoning here. And I make sure I get the edges here, so any of the seasoning that's on the side, I make sure to pat it on the edges, so that way even the sides get flavor. Now this part is very important. I use fine ground black pepper here. I'll do a pretty thin layer of this. Not as thin as the garlic and onion powder, a little thicker than that, but not as thick as the brisket. The reason for this is I want that flavor of the pepper, but I don't want to put too much. If you put too much of the black pepper, that's fine one, it would be mushy. However, the table grind black pepper, this you want it thick as you can get, especially if you're someone who likes bark. So the more bark you like, the thicker you want this to be. Earlier I had made sure to rub in brisket seasoning, the onion seasoning, the garlic seasoning. With this pepper, you just want to put a layer, you don't want to rub it in, because if it's too much, it will simply fall off. That part will take care of itself. Now for the beef tallow. This is basically beef fat. I know this sounds weird, but you want to warm this up. I did it in the oven for like 15-30 seconds. Then I put some brisket seasoning. This is the first time I tried the brisket seasoning part of it, so we'll see how it works out. So I'm going to stir this all together. Then I have a giant syringe. I'm going to take this melted beef tallow, and I'm going to poke holes and fill up the brisket here. What this will do is make sure there's fat inside the brisket and make sure it'll be nice and juicy. And I'll do this a few times in the brisket. Love that just tear apart easily juicy brisket. Don't mind me, I'm having a little too much fun here. While the meat marinates, I'm preparing the pit. Throwing some charcoal into some wood and light that sucker up. At this point, I have enough drinks, I'm lit as well. I usually use pecan wood, but no one has any, so I'm trying to use this with charcoal and chips and see how it works out. Double checking the grill is nice and clean before we proceed. Finishing off my drink because, you know how it is. Cheers, brother. Now at the bottom of the pit, I add these trays filled with the unused beef tallow I had earlier. This will give that tallow that smoke flavor, as well as catch any juices that fall out the brisket, and you could use that later. While the pit gets a temp, you could sit in your hammock and enjoy another drink. And when it's time, go ahead and throw that brisket on. Fat up so that the fat melts into the brisket. Your first few hours are going to be uncovered. You want to get that pure smoke flavor to it. And I have no clue how this happened, but I have a super thin piece of brisket here, so we're going to smoke this and see how long it takes, and probably have that piece first. Now this part is extremely important after you put on your second piece of brisket. Make sure you get a kiss from your wife or significant other. She saw my pimple and had to point it out, so to distract her, I gave her another kiss. And while I'm inside cleaning dishes, so my wife doesn't freak out about the mess I made in the kitchen, my daughter decided to take my spot in the hammock because, she takes my spot everywhere I sit. Alright, at this point, it's been on the grill for about 3-4 hours. Internal temp is 165, so now it's time to wrap up that brisket. I lay out the butcher paper. This is what I'll wrap the brisket in here in a second. But first, I'm taking the beef tallow that I put at the bottom of the grill earlier that's been smoking with the brisket. This has also been catching all the juices from the brisket. What I'm going to do is basically paint this whole butcher paper with this beef tallow. This is going to trap all the juices from the brisket in this butcher paper while it smokes more. And it's going to melt that tallow all over the brisket. Then I'll take the remaining beef tallow and just drizzle it all over the top of the brisket. This is where you have all your flavor, and this will keep the meat from drying out. Then once it's done, wrap it back up, throw it on the grill for another 4 hours or so, or eternal temp reaches 200 degrees. I guess I forgot to mention earlier, I have my grill between 200 and 250 degrees, 200 to start, and when I throw this back on the grill, it'll be about 250. At this point, your brisket got most of the smoke flavor already, so now you're just trying to trap in the juices. Don't let that escape. I just added more wood because I know one of these two briskets are done. But normally you would check the temperature to make sure it's the perfect temp. My little handy thermometer here says it's 201 degrees, so perfect. So I'm going to wrap it back up and throw it back in the cooler. You want every single drop of the juice in there. And what this cooler is going to do is let it rest for about 2 to 3 hours. The cooler will trap the heat and the moisture in here. But I'll let it cool back down. All the flavor that left the meat will be pulled right back in. And the results are perfect. Just pure perfection.